would. And then lastly, we have the Denver Indian Family Resource Center. This provides services to American Indian and Alaska Native families who are in the Denver metro area. And DIFRAC was started in 2000 as a response to the amount of children who were being taken from Native families and being adopted to non-Native families. As a result, we specifically offered services to those that were involved in the child welfare system initially. However, over the past 15 years, our services have expanded so that we are now providing services to Native families in general. We do still have a very heavy focus on Indian child welfare advocacy as well as case management to those families. However, we provide services to any Native family in the Denver area. Services that we provide specifically include preservation and preventative services, and we attempt to utilize a wraparound approach. What that means is that when we're providing services, we specifically look at not just giving the family one service. For example, we offer a parenting class. When a family comes to that parenting class or asks for it, we are able to then talk to them about other services we provide and help them get, for example, if they need therapeutic services, we offer that. Or if we find that they have children who are interested in traditional youth sports, we can connect them with those services directly in-house. To touch base a little bit on our services specifically, we provide, when many of our families walk through the door, they will be connected with our resource and referral specialist. For resource and referral, they come in and their basic needs are assessed as well as any strengths the family has, and they're talked about what those strengths are to ensure that they have the most positive outcome. We try to be very social work based in that we let the family make the decisions and everything is client led and client empowered. Resource and referral often identifies that there are additional needs the family may need. From there, that could include intensive case management, which is kind of our largest service overall. Intensive case management is a strengths-based, trauma-informed approach that helps our Native families typically in terms of preserving their family, but also when their children have been removed or they are involved in child welfare. That's when we'll come in and we'll do what's called the ICWA advocacy piece. We're able to make those connections to enroll the families in a specific tribe if they're not currently enrolled, or help them figure out maybe what tribe that they may identify with. And we also provide advocacy in terms of notification of tribes and kind of helping with some of that work that county caseworkers aren't necessarily able to do simply because of their time schedules. Intensive case management is typically a long-term approach. We attempt to see the families a minimum of one time per week, and we hope to see them more along the lines of 3 to 4 times a week. In terms of behavioral health, many of our families have experienced significant long-term trauma that is often intergenerational and historic in nature. Because of that, their functioning is sometimes not at a level where they can be the best possible parent to their children. And as such, we use our behavioral health services in a way to provide our families with an opportunity to learn more about their trauma, how it impacts them, and how they can move beyond some of the trauma. We also provide our parenting classes, as I mentioned. We offer a culturally adapted curriculum of the Nurturing Skills for Families program. And many of our parents go through that, and as I said, we do find that they have additional needs, and we're able to connect those in-house or provide external referrals. Next, we have youth leadership and engagement. We offer what is called the Mile High Chapter of Unity, which is a youth-led leadership group who has national recognition. And at the same time, we offer a parent engagement program where different speakers will come in and talk to parents about the specific needs of urban native children and what it's like to be a parent in that community. And lastly, we offer a multitude of healthy living programs, including adult exercise, youth exercise. We also offer youth sports. We have basketball programs for Native youth. And these programs continue to expand and grow and include Indigenous gardening, as well as a youth summer camp for 13 to 17-year-old youth. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in terms of who is receiving services, we operate under what we consider the Native definition of family, meaning that when a family walks in our doors, we're not going to not provide services to someone because maybe they're not a parent or maybe they're not even related to the family. Whoever the Native family considers as part of their family is who we're going to help and provide services to. With that, all family members are included in treatment planning. We find that the best possible outcomes happen when every family member is at the table and has a say about what the goals are and what the strengths are of the family, as well as areas that they may need to improve. And importantly, DIFAC is a little bit different from some other organizations in that we provide services to families that identify as American Indian or Alaska Native, regardless of their tribal enrollment status. This is different from, for example, Denver Indian Health. They provide services only to families who are enrolled with a federally recognized tribe. Last year, we provided services to nearly 500 individuals, and importantly, over half of those were not enrolled in a federally recognized tribe. Next slide, please. So what I really want to touch on today, and I'm hoping that we can have some time for questions and maybe some discussion about this area, is what it looks like to provide outreach to the urban Indian community. What we've found in the Denver area is that urban Native families don't necessarily congregate in specific neighborhoods or specific areas. They're very much widespread. And as such, it can be really difficult to provide outreach, and sometimes we feel that there's families out there we know we're missing. So I just want to talk about a couple of things that really have worked for us. One of them, first and foremost, is flyers. For some communities, this doesn't work at all, but we've found that it's been very helpful in just having updated, frequent flyers going out to the other places where Native families may congregate. That can include Indian education programs, the Denver Indian Center, as well as Denver Indian Health provide us numerous referrals. And we also tend to put flyers in areas where the community at large may see them, and for example, a county caseworker or a teacher may see it and think that it impacts somebody who they may be serving. Word of mouth is critical. Over 70% of our participants in our programs come from word of mouth, simply because of what they've heard about our services. So on that note, it's really important to have a strong positive reputation in the community in order to establish that outreach and maintain those word of mouth referrals. In terms of word of mouth, an individual will often ask us to reach out to others. We simply can't do that in some situations. I don't want to say it's ambulance chasing, but it doesn't necessarily feel good, or it's not maybe ethically appropriate. So we work with that family to give them potential flyers or brochures about our services and ask that they reach out to the person and have them contact us. And we find that that's a very common way that families get involved in our services as well. And lastly, I really want to stress the importance of this area. Collaboration with other agencies is huge. We offer a monthly collaborative. It's called the 7 Stars Collaborative, where we have over 30 agencies come to the table and discuss a little bit about our services as well as cross-training pieces. So we always let another agency provide cross-training on a topic of their choice that they feel impacts Native families. And then our agency will provide a very brief discussion and presentation about something that impacts Native families on our end. For example, our May monthly meeting is tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about historical trauma, as well as tribal relocation and how that impacts the families we work with. Having that collaboration is huge in terms of advertising services, providing that means to refer, and then Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. 1 second, please. And then in terms of looking at just providing those collaboratives and ensuring that we are having a very smooth referral process. Moving on to the next slide. Other things that we found that have worked include meeting the family where they're at. That can be both metaphorically as well as in a literal sense. So looking at where the family is in terms of their location. Oftentimes we're available to go meet the family if they're somewhere. For example, if they're in a county that is not Denver, Denver or Jefferson County, our typical counties we work with, we can go out to them easily. But it's also meeting them where they're at in terms of their needs. If the family is in crisis, we can't necessarily move to a place where they're able to establish therapy, go to parenting classes, attend other services. So it's really important just to find out where they're at, maybe mentally as well as that physical geographic portion. Engagement is really important in terms of giving them as much information as possible about programs and services. I think that's really important in terms of allowing them a say in what your programs and services look like. And I know that the callers on this call may not apply to you, but that's what we see on our end anyway. Having a resource and referral specialist to provide connections has been imperative in terms of making sure that our families are getting their basic needs met. Importantly, we find that offering events in conjunction with other events is incredibly helpful. For example, we recently had a parenting class last week, and what we did for some of our other families who were new to the program is we had them come in for an information session about some of our trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy services. That way they can identify if that's a potential need for the family, and it also allows them that opportunity to learn more about services while they're already in the building. Similarly, we do this with the youth group that I mentioned, as well as having a parent engagement group at the same time. Participation is increased because both the kids and the parents have something to do. It's set for the same amount of time, and they're learning kind of the same things or working on the same projects at the same time that are beneficial to the family and to the social connectedness. Offering events at a central location or utilizing satellite locations is huge. I will say that this is an area where sometimes we struggle simply because Denver is a very large area. There's over 600,000 residents just in Denver specifically, not to mention all the numerous suburban areas surrounding us. Because of that, we do our best to try to be in a central location, but we offer some of our services. For example, our gardening is at an off-site location where there's more space and we feel it's easier for families to get to that participate in that program. Providing food is beneficial, I think, in any sense, but when you're working with Native populations, I think it's especially important in looking at that traditional cultural piece of breaking bread together. We find that if we have food at events, anybody shows up, they're more than happy to have a meal or snack, and then they get to learn something while they're here as well. And lastly, I think providing additional incentives is critical. In terms of, we recently had a life skills group where nobody was coming, and we couldn't really figure out why, but we started offering an incentive of a $10 grocery voucher each time somebody came to the group, and we had over 80 participants in under 8 weeks. And we find that this isn't necessarily the approach we always want to take, but if there's that incentive, maybe just one time or over a couple weeks, you'll potentially get the word out and your families will come in and learn more about your services and what you do. And then lastly, I'd like to talk about what does not work. So we offer booths at many events, and we have reduced the amount we do this. We've done it at powwows. and at different Indian education fairs, at different conferences, and we find that they don't work too well. We're not really sure why. Maybe it's the materials we have out. Maybe we don't have out enough food. Maybe, you know, it could be a lot of reasons, but we're finding that we really just don't get a lot of people coming in for our services saying that they saw us at a booth. However, community presence is very important. So it's important to kind of look at potential staff time, see availability, and see, you know, if it's something where a presence is needed or something that can be bypassed. We've also found that short meetings don't really help, which contradicts some research out there that people have a pretty short attention span. But what we find is that if we have a meeting that is an hour, 1 hour or less, families don't necessarily show up because it's not worth their time. It is hard for many of our families to access us simply because they're taking public transportation. Though we are fortunate to be on 2 major bus lines, it still impacts our families a great deal and takes a lot of time out of their day to come see us. So we always try to make their time with us extremely worthwhile and do everything possible to make them feel comfortable and supported. And going with that, expecting the individual or family to travel a great distance is another barrier to being able to outreach with Native families. Over 80% of our clients rely solely on public transportation, and the other 10% sometimes rely on it. So it's really important that the services that you're looking at providing are in an area that the family is able to get to, and if not, considering going out to where the family is at. And lastly, expecting the same results to work every time. I think that this is huge in that things won't always work right every time, and your population is going to change. Sometimes, for example, we have a support group where nobody showed up last week because it was raining. And we did phenomenal outreach to get people there, but nobody showed up. So I think it's just being open and honest and kind of looking at trends, at, you know, what's going to work best for your family, what times are going to work best, being open to working out of the 8 to 5 hours, and just providing your families with the opportunity to come to your services when it's best for them. In terms of how parent centers can reach Native families, like I said, partnerships are critical. In terms of offering collaboratives, I think that is that's one of the best ways that you're able to enhance partnerships. The monthly meeting we have, we see numerous agencies starting different collaborations. We've also started a multitude of collaborations with other agencies just because of that meeting and just getting people in the same room at the same time. Developing flyers that are easy for families to understand. I think sometimes we get caught up when we're making a flyer and having as much information as possible. And I think really you need to look at what the family wants out of the service and what's going to be most beneficial for them to gain out of it, instead of saying, for example, we provide some evidence-based programs, and I don't think most of our families are concerned that it's evidence-based, although our funders may be and some of our partners. When we're really looking at developing advertising, our families probably aren't going to be concerned about that, but they may be concerned that the parenting class, for example, is something that can help them achieve a core order that they may have to complete that. Offering incentives is really helpful, and incentives don't necessarily have to be monetary based. They could be other services that you're able to provide families. Money definitely helps, but so does food. Just little things that you're able to provide the family that they may not otherwise have access to. And then ask the families you're currently working with. I think this is the most important thing, having roundtable discussions or even just very casual, you know, what is going to work best for you. Every population is different. Every Native urban population is vastly different, though there are a lot of inherent specific characteristics and very common characteristics. Every single one has different reasons for being in the community, whether, as Terry had said, some of them have been there as part of a relocation program. Other ones, it's just a very, very close site that offers, or a very close city that offers a lot of services. So knowing that, I think it's really helpful. And then lastly, I already went over that, sorry. So next steps, learn more about the demographics of urban natives in your state. Knowing the population is really helpful. Knowing if there are clusters where the population specifically is at helps exponentially. For example, we found that there was a very small cluster in one area, and we were able to do some of that advertising and outreach in that area. Collaborating with an agency that you haven't thought of before. We recently started collaborating with an agency called the Conflict Center, who provides curriculums on bullying and reducing conflict in families. And it was an agency I personally had never heard of until a couple weeks ago, and now they'll be part of our youth engagement group as well. And then advertise a meeting with families that you're currently working with. This is really helpful, especially when you're working with somebody and you ask them just to bring in a friend or maybe a family member who they think might need the services or might need the additional support. This is a great meeting where, again, you can offer food, offer time to just kind of talk about your services.
And if I can add, Sarah, I would like to add a couple of other things about our next steps. Just as a reminder, to our parent centers, just as we are, all of us are individuals and our programs are individualized and personalized to where we are and how we each operate within the big picture, the same is the same for our urban Indian centers, that they are all different and provide different services as well. Some only do events and powwows. Others provide direct services, such as Denver Indian Center, such as health and education. And as you make connections with families, take time to build those relationships. Because families, it's going to take time and for them to gain the confidence and trust in us. Go ahead. Whoops. I think we're having technical difficulties here. I think we lost Sarah. Go back to resources. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
All right, I apologize for that, everybody. I'm not sure what happened. But we do have some resources here. I do want to make it clear to everybody I'm available by email. My email, I believe, is on the last slide, but it's snelson@skyfrac.org. We do also offer some additional resources on our website, and then you are able to check the other resources that are listed on this page as well. So from there, we will move into any questions that anyone has. And my understanding is you're able to type those questions. I will let Terry speak about that, though.
Yes, in the chat room is where you'll post your questions, and then Sarah and I can answer them. So if anyone has questions at this time, we would look forward to fielding those questions. And as we're waiting for questions to be posted. One of the things I would encourage the parent centers to do as you brainstorm among your staff to look at how you can reach out to culturally diverse populations in your areas, as we talk specifically about natives, but to really unleash your creativity because of the skills that you all bring to the table and your diverse experiences of your own staffs, to look at the creativity of ways to reach out to natives and other diverse populations. None have been posted.
Okay, hello, this is Judy Wiley. Hey, we do have a couple of questions. One of them is, are there any customs, foods, restrictions when providing foods at these events? So Terry or both
overall,
of you can
yeah, I think it will vary by tribe depending on the time of year, but generally when food is provided, basic food that you would provide at any kind of event reception is pretty safe. Sarah, is there anything that you would like to offer?
Yeah, I would just like to say that when you're working with an urban native population, what you'll often find is you're not just working with one specific tribe, you're working with many diverse tribes. So it can be really hard to adapt to those customs. What I would say is that we typically try to offer a moment for prayer, and we'll ask an elder to do that.
I think that spiritualism is so critical to our people, and I realize that Sarah also understands that we're all federally funded, but definitely picking somebody from within the audience. You don't have to have it pre-set up, but asking somebody in the audience who is an elder, like she said, and asking them to say a few words is culturally really appropriate. We have done a couple of trainings where we've kind of had, I don't know any other word to say it than foo-foo food, which is kind of like some specialty wrap things that the native people really didn't know what the food was, and they were like, now what is this? And they were, we ended up taking most of it home. So I think it is really important to have some common foods that are not real fancy or you know, too out of the box, because our people are very I think Sarah and Terry would both agree that we're very careful about, you know, what do we know where the food is and what kind it is, and we're a little careful about that. There's another question about bringing services to them. When going to families to bring them services, are they willing to meet close or within walking distance from their house? So that's more a question about access to what, and our parent centers put on workshops and things, so I think if you both could address the transportation issue and talk a little bit about that, that would be really helpful.
Sarah, I'll let you go first and then I'll add to that.
Okay, great. What I found with our families, which is probably going to be a little bit different, is that our families are more than willing most of the time to leave their house and go somewhere relatively close in terms of location. However, we always try to meet them in the home if possible, just for the first additional services, the first time we're meeting them, if they're open to that and they're interested in that, so that we can assess their strengths in a place where they feel comfortable, and we can assess those needs as well. And that mostly goes for our case management and behavioral health services. Our other ones, we find that for our healthy living services, they are more than comfortable to go to a satellite location if it's close. However, as I did mention, the transportation is often a big barrier. Ideally, I think if we had more funding, we would provide additional transportation to our families to get them to and from our services. It's just simply not something we're able to do most of the time.
And along with that, as we partner with other organizations, and as Sarah mentioned, the importance of meeting that family where they're most comfortable. And oftentimes in Native families, that family unit is much more than the parents and the children. It's extended family who have a big part in saying and making decisions about what's going to happen next, especially as we talk about services to children with special needs. So the reality may be it may be more appropriate to meet in the home, but I think as we contact and speak with families to give them options and talk about where would work best for them, and if we partner with other agencies, there may be a location close to the family home that's a neutral site where they may feel comfortable coming as well. Because sometimes there is some fear about letting people they don't know into their homes. But as we talked about creating that partnership and giving them options about who and where to meet. Go ahead, Judy.
There was one question also about, are there any language concerns that people should be aware of?
There possibly could be. Often if they're living in urban communities or suburban communities, they may be speaking English. If it's extended family or even parents, they may be speaking the native language. But I think generally they have working knowledge and understanding of English so that it shouldn't be a problem. But again, as we're building that relationship, talking and asking, what language are you most comfortable communicating in?
What about interpreters?
That's where interpreters can be challenging. Within programs, and as Sarah mentioned, when you're in an urban setting, you're going to have a multitude of tribal identities and languages. So if a family needs an interpreter, I would ask them if they have a family member or someone they know that they would feel comfortable in bringing with them to help interpret if they don't understand something. Having them provide the interpreter, there's a trust relationship already established, versus an outside agency bringing in someone to interpret for that native language. Sarah, what have you all done in Denver?
Terry, I can honestly say that we haven't had that come up yet. However, we do have a list of potential interpreters. If the family does not have somebody that they know or feel comfortable with, we do offer a list, and we would do a visit with them to establish their comfort level, and we always want to make sure that it's client-led or family-led, and that they're calling the shots, whether this is someone they want to work with or there's discomfort. We also, importantly, offer, we do have a sign language interpreter that we work with if needed as well. So that's a need that we have seen come up.
Okay, we have another question about any tips that you guys could provide about other services that provide services to American Indians or Native Alaskans, and so what kind of agencies are out there, and how do you communicate with those other agencies? Number one, probably, how do you find out about them? And number two, how do you connect with other organizations out there that are sort of serving Native populations? Sarah, that's probably a question for you.
Sure. So there are lots of other agencies out there that provide other services. For example, most public schools have an Indian education program, or at least one person that offers services to Native students specifically. So it's important to kind of look around in the public school system and ask around about that. What we found recently, there's been a couple new agencies opened up. I know that one is providing domestic violence services directly to Native women and children, and we found out about them by them coming to an open house that we had. We have found previously more information about other agencies through our families. They'll mention they're working with somebody at a different agency. But importantly, I think there's culturally specific services in terms of counseling out there in urban settings. I know it's often difficult to find a counselor who may be culturally responsive or Native, and we try to develop a resource list that we're able to provide our families. And then just looking for any Indian health services. There are 34 different Indian health service urban sites out there. Denver is lucky to have one of them. And just finding out them and finding out you know, who they partner with and who they know that provide services to American Indian and Alaska Native families.
And I think for those that are new to this scene, even contacting your State Department about what resources that they're aware of, and your state agencies that provide support and assistance to all families may have specific information about additional resources for Native communities or for Native families in addition to what they provide.
Okay. We have one final question that we'll take, and that will be who in general, as far as a Native American family, is the educational decision maker?
I don't think it's one specific person. Typically, it is a family discussion with a lot of weight carried by the elders in that family dynamic, providing guidance and direction. But my experience within my own tribe, and as I have worked with Native families, is that it is not going to be a single person, that it's going to be discussion among the adults with the elders giving insight and a lot of weight into what kinds of services they're willing to accept or go after.
Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I would absolutely agree with what Terry said. We find that it's more of a family decision, and that most decision making comes from a family approach overall.
Okay, and I would just like to remind people, we had a couple of questions about Native American populations in urban areas. On the handout that we have on the website, Urban Indian Centers, it does have the urban population for each of those urban Indian sites. We can also, as an organization, provide you with any population numbers you may need. So email Terry. Could we go back to that page that had the resources on it? I don't know who's in control right now, but go back to the resource page. Right there. Perfect. And then Terry's email's on there. Sarah, would you mind typing yours in the chat box to everybody, and then anybody that would like to talk to Sarah or Terry, you're more than welcome to email them directly, and then we will make sure you get Sarah's information. Let me see if there's any more questions that we can. There was a question about visibility as far as these are parent centers who are trying to get the word out to Native families. So there was a question about booths at events. Does it provide just the visibility for purposes, or is it better just to focus your time partnering with other organizations? What do you think is the best way to put your resources in? Because parent centers have limited, I'm sure, dollars for outreach services. It would be good if, Sarah, maybe you could respond. What do you think is the best bang for their buck? Do you think it would be spending a lot of staff time and energy in providing an information booth somewhere, or would it be better to invest your time in partnering with other organizations?
I can personally say that partnering with other agencies is going to be the best bang for your buck. If you're looking at that compared to providing an information booth or a resource booth at some sort of fair, at least from what I've seen in different positions, including my current one, by far developing relationships and just kind of working with other partners and finding other partners out there is going to be a much more cost-effective approach and will lead more likely to finding Native families that you can work with. And also having that partnership established is really helpful as well. And that's all I have. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I think at this time we will in this series of webinars. NABTAC is very interested in hearing feedback from this. If there are specific webinars that you think would be beneficial to you or your staff, what we will do is, like we did this time, we will get feedback from the field and then get other presenters to come on with us and partner with us about the number one request we got was about learning about urban Indian centers, so that's why we were fortunate to get Sarah and have her come on with us on board and help us out. She's an excellent resource. Do not feel uncomfortable about contacting her at all. She's been nothing but open and willing to share everything that their center has learned from mistakes and things that have done well. So please don't feel intimidated about contacting her. Right, Sarah?
Absolutely. I am happy to take any questions you have, and if I can't answer it, I will definitely try to find somebody who can.
Okay, and we know that Terry is available, so we want to thank you all for participating in this webinar, and like I said, we'd like feedback about any other webinars you would like us to provide in the future. Again, we're there to provide whatever services you all believe that you may need, and we would like to meet that need. So after the webinar, there'll be a really quick questionnaire, and so we just want to thank you for spending the afternoon with us and taking time to view this webinar.
Yes, thank you very much. And as a reminder, again, the handouts are posted on the NABTAC website, and the PowerPoint will be posted there after this webinar. So we look forward to hearing from you all with your suggestions and requests for more information. So please feel free to use us as a contact and as a resource. So thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you, everybody.